Greetings, this is Matt Fiello, and I'm with the Cisco Network Compute BU, and we're back with another Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series video, another domain policy video, a policy used by the domain profile in Intersight Managed Mode. It's the Ethernet Network Group Policy. Now, this particular policy causes some confusion with our customers, and I'd like to take the time here with this video to add some clarity to its use. So with that, let's get on to a few slides, followed by a demo. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this Ethernet Network Group Policy. Now, this policy lives in Intersight in two different places. It is in fact a domain policy, okay, consumed by the port policy and then deployed with a domain profile. But it's also a server policy that gets deployed with the server profile. Okay, so let's draw the distinction here. What we're talking about today is the domain policy. Okay, and for the bulk of users out there, the vast majority of users, you will actually not use the Ethernet Network Group Policy as part of the port policy and then gets deployed to with the domain profile. Okay, so in other words, it's not obvious, I understand that, but it's only used in a disjoint layer 2 scenario, in an uplink scenario for disjoint layer 2, or appliance port uplink scenarios, okay, which are corner cases for the majority of the UCS install base out there. You're not doing those types of architectures, then you're not going to use this policy, okay, as a domain policy. Okay, so why is this policy there? Well, it's there for disjoint layer 2. It's there to help steer those VLANs to the applicable uplink port or port channel. But in the absence of this policy, and also the fact that your VLANs have the auto allow on uplinks flag set, which is default, you have traditional legacy UCS fabric interconnect behavior. All your VLANs get pinned to all the uplink ports or port channels automatically. So you don't need to do any kind of VLAN steering with this policy. So I hope that helps clarify it. There's been a lot of confusion about that. And going forward, maybe we can take a look at it, making it a little bit easier to understand from within the tool, within the UI itself. But let's move on. Okay, so we've already talked about the purpose of the policy, but I will point out that for those that are doing disjoint layer 2 and appliance uplink ports, this policy will be very applicable. We'll come back with separate videos on those particular use cases, but this video is really intended for the bulk of the users out there doing traditional Ethernet uplink ports, port channels, to a single layer 2 domain, not disjoint multiple layer 2 domains. So therefore, we're really not going to use this policy in the domain profile. And as we've talked about before, it is a nested policy, so you would see it, the option of using it on your Ethernet uplink ports, appliance uplink ports and port channels, etc. It's tempting to put something there, I understand, and that's where the confusion lies. You have a policy field to select a policy. You think you need to have the policy there, but in fact, you don't. Okay, so as you surmise from my dialogue thus far, the recommendation is unless you're doing disjoint layer 2 or appliance uplink ports or port channels, you don't use this policy. Just leave it. Leave the option there. The policy option is unselected. Okay, so like we do with all of our Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series videos, I like to put a slide in here on like context slide, like where this policy exists. Okay, so if we look at the domain profile on the left, You have one or two, recommended to have two fabric-specific port policies. And then as you go in there to configure your Ethernet uplink port or port channel, or appliance uplink port or port channel, you will see the Ethernet network group policy. And we have the null sign there because for the vast majority of customers doing traditional Ethernet uplink through ports or port channels to a single layer 2 domain, you're not going to use this policy. Okay, so moving on to the demo, and once again, this policy will really come into play when we discuss disjoint layer 2 on a separate video, appliance port uplink scenarios, a separate video. But let's just talk about where this policy is a little bit. So again, we're in infrastructure service, policies, create a policy. We're going to filter down. We're talking about domain policies. And there's our Ethernet network group. But also notice, again, covering a separate video, if you go to the UCS server policies, you absolutely see this policy. Now, this is required here. So when we get to that video, okay, we're going to talk about building the Ethernet network group policy, basically populating our VLANs for our given VNICs. Okay, and we'll talk about that. But let's get back here to UCS domain policy. Ethernet network group, click start. We're going to give it a name. And probably should put a domain designation on there. So if we are going to build this policy out, then you're going to build the allowed VLANs, and then we'd be attaching these VLANs then to applicable uplink ports, and it, like a disjoint layer 2 domain, uplink ports or port channels. And of course, the key there is those VLANs cannot have the auto allow on uplinks flag set. So there's been a lot of customers that get errors because they think they need this policy. All their VLANs are auto allow on uplinks, yet they're trying to use this policy, okay? And then they end up getting a disjoint layer 2 error when they deploy the domain profile. So don't fall into that. We're just simply not using this policy. Case in point here, if we go to a port policy, here's where some of the confusion might lie. Let's go to a port policy. Let's click ahead. Okay, let's configure that uplink. Notice Ethernet network group policy is not selected. So this is what you want, okay, for the vast majority of UCS customers out there that are simply uplinking Ethernet through a port or port channel to a single switched layer 2 domain, not a multi-switched layer 2 domain like disjoint. Okay, so I hope that drives that point home, and that completes the demonstration. All right, so that concludes our video discussing Ethernet network group policy within the domain policy framework. I hope that clears up some things for you all, and would ask you to please come back and look and consume more Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series videos. Thank you.